Korea, a country with 5,000 years of history. The ancestors of modern Koreans started a civilization at the eastern tip of Asia on the Korean peninsula. The traces of their lives remain as precious cultural heritages, embedded in the 10,000 mountains across the country. The mountains themselves were tall fortresses that protected those precious artifacts. In this journey, we explore the great heritage of Korea that survives in these mountains. There, Korea's unique culture, that which is not found in cities, is still alive. The ancient spirit that created modern Korea is deeply rooted in the mountains. Now, we enter Korea's mountains, the beauty of which cannot be felt until seeing it from a bird's eye view. A thin stream of water started flowing a long time ago, and over time it gradually became stronger. It cut through a solid rock wall, and it is now a deep and wide river. Since ancient times, many poets came here to gain inspiration. When we pass this cliff and enter the foothill, we come across a site as old as the cliff. Here and there are rocks congregated in groups. These are tombs called dolmen from the Bronze Age 2,700 years ago. Dolmans are one of the relics of prehistoric man's worship of megaliths. The ancient people made tombs for their chiefs in their societies. The Korean peninsula has the world's densest concentration of dolmens. More than half of the world's dolmens are on the Korean peninsula, and that number reaches to about 40,000. Korea's rare and historical dolmens have been designated UNESCO World Heritage Properties. At Hwasun is the Pygmy Rock dolmen that weighs up to 200 tons. It is the world's heaviest dolmen. Deeper in the foot of the mountains, the quarry that produced the dolmens remains intact. It is a valuable source for researching how the dolmens were created. The dolmens differ in size and form, but at this location, we can discover a similarity. That is, most of them are on mountainous areas. The Bronze Age people built villages on high areas to defend themselves in power struggles with other clans. As a result, traces of this period, such as dolmens and housing sites, are commonly found in the mountains. The ancestors of Koreans began living in mountains from those times. On Gonghwa Island, about 120 dolmens are spread around the island. The Bulga dolmen is the biggest in the world. it is likely that a significant number of people were needed to make such a structure. We do not know who these tombs belong to, but it is clear that these people had great power in their large societies. The ancient glory of the past remains as relics, and above these tombs, the sun rises once again. "15 kilometers away from the dolmen is Ganghwa Island's highest mountain, called Manisan. The Manisan is one of Korea's most sacred mountains. Here, too, we can see an ancient relic. Manisan's mountain range stretches far. The granite at the top points to the sky, as if to be a passage to the heavens. The peak of Manisan has traces from 4,300 years ago, when the first country on the Korean peninsula was founded. The neatly stacked altar at the peak is called Chamsongdan. It is said that 5,000 years ago, Dangun, known as the founder and the first king of the Korean peninsula's first country, built this altar and offered a sacrifice to the gods. Chamsongdan was made with natural rocks that could be found on the mountain. The round lower step symbolizes the sky, and the square-shaped upper step symbolizes land. The descendants of Dangun, the later generation of kings, returned to the altar each year and offered a sacrifice for the well-being of the nation. Every October 3rd, the date Dangun is thought to have founded the nation, a sacrifice is offered at Chamsongdan. People sincerely offer sacrifices to Dangun and the gods. To take part in this ritual, one has to be able to climb up from the base of the mountain to the peak. It is definitely an arduous trail, but many come to make the pilgrimage up to the very top. Against the blue sky, the traditional dance of the angels on the altar adds great beauty to the ritual. Even the sacred torch of the Korean National Sports Festival is lit here on this day, for it is a significant location where the roots of the Korean people began. On the same day, there is another sacrifice of Dangun here in Taebaksan. It seems that even the wind and rain cannot stop the tradition that has continued for thousands of years. In mythology, Taebaksan is where Dangun's father descended from the heavens to the human world. From generation to generation, Koreans offer sacrifice to the gods on Taebaksan and Manisan. As the ancestors of the Korean people established the nation on the mountains, these mountains have become more and more sacred. The mountain at the southwest tip of the Korean peninsula is Wallchulsan. Here at Wallchulsan, there was a deep faith in these boulders. People believed there was a spiritual power in the boulders of Wallchulsan, and they called these boulders miracles, or Yongan boulders. As a result, this entire county was named Yongan. Today, most people come to Wallchulsan to see the landscape. This masterpiece of nature draws admiration on each varying step. However, there are still those who believe in the divine power of Wallchulsan and comfort retreats. Among Korea's many divine mountains, Gyeongsan was known as such from ancient times. The Eastern philosophy of Feng Shui regards Gyeongsan as a good place to build the seat of government. Many people rest their minds and bodies with the positive energy coming from Gyeongsan. The Korean people's unique martial art, called Gichonmun, was founded on Gyeongsan. Since Dangun's time, the martial art spread from mountain to mountain, and it is passed on to this day as a tradition for the body. Movements as smooth as water and wind, as agile as a bird. The martial art on the steep cliff against the backdrop of Gyeongsan's landscape looks like a beautiful dance. The principle of this martial art is the unity of man and nature. The Divine Mountain spiritually trains the practitioners. In the hearts of the people, mountains have become an even more spiritual place. Among Korea's many mountains, the strange-looking ones seem to get the most attention. What we see resembles ears poking through the clouds. What could it be? It is Manisan, which means mountain that looks like a horse's ear. The site of Myeon, as the clouds gradually lift, is known as this region's most wondrous sight. Myeon has two peaks composed of two giant rocks. Am and Su, meaning female and male, are added to the names of the peaks. So the eastern peak is called Sumaisan, and the western peak is called Ammaisan. The southern face of Myeon is sunken here and there, as if it has suffered a bomb raid. Typhony, as this type of topography is called, is a phenomena in which weak points in the rock fall away, forming round, hollow spaces. The typhony at Myeon are the world's most developed. People believe that stronger energy dwelled in such a strange topography. So here, pagodas were constructed in order to fulfill wishes. Called Tapsa for being a temple with pagodas, this place has over 80 rock pagodas. Some pagodas are about 3 times the size of an average adult's height. It is said that in the 19th century, a resident of the province collected rocks in the day and constructed the pagodas at night. Tapsa lies in the narrow space between the two peaks. Strong winds blow, but the stone pagodas do not collapse. Truly a mysterious landscape created by man and mountain. People believe that the strong energy from this place gives them good fortune. Each year, about 1 million people come to make wishes. On one hand, the folk culture of worshipping mountains and boulders left many traces on the mountains of the Korean peninsula. As Buddhism came in through China in the 4th century, an even more interesting phenomena occurred. In Kungju, in the southeast of the Korean peninsula, we can see those traces. The entire city of Kungju is designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Its nickname is the Open Air Museum. Many cultural heritage sites are scattered throughout the city. That is because it was the capital of the Shilla Kingdom for about 1,000 years, dating back to 57 BC. Kungju is surrounded by mountains. This mountain, called Namsan, is to the south of Kungju. At a glance, it looks like an ordinary boulder mountain. But at a closer inspection, the mountain's true character is visible. There are etches of the Buddha on each boulder and pagodas scattered throughout the mountain. Over the years, the etches were cut away or destroyed, but Buddha's smile remains vivid. The statues of Buddha are often placed inside temples, but here at Namsan, the statues are in the open. This is because the Buddhas were sculpted from the very rocks that were there. More than 600 Buddhist cultural heritage properties have been found on this mere 500-meter-high mountain. Namsan itself has become a big temple. And UNESCO designated the entire mountain a World Heritage Site. Buddhism seeped into the peninsula's mountain-worshipping culture and created this Korean Buddhist masterpiece. Meanwhile, east of Kungju, Tohamsan stands facing the sea. Tohamsan is Kungju's highest mountain. On its hillside lies Korea's most well-known temple, the Bulga. Because of the Bulga, Tohamsan has been regarded as a sacred land since ancient times. It is said that in the past, people would take off their shoes at the base of the mountain before ascending. With a name that means Buddha's kingdom, Bulga gives off a sense of elegant divinity. These stone steps, built in the 8th century, have names that mean blue cloud and white cloud. The soft arches remain today, connecting this world to Buddha's. When we go up these steps, we may very well see Buddha's kingdom laid out before us. Each area of Bulga symbolizes different worlds. The widest area of the temple, at the center, represents the descent of Buddha's kingdom into our world. To the west is paradise, the afterlife of Buddhism. And behind the highest area of the temple is the Buddha's clear and bright utopia, the Lotus World. Still, the people of Shilla believed that the tangible world was most important. Yongan, the building of Sakyamuni Buddha, towers above the complex. The Shilla people's desire for Buddha's kingdom to be realized in this world is vividly noticeable here. The Sakyatop and Dabuk-top pagodas stands along each other in the front of the Yongan. The Sakyatop pagoda's official name is the 3-story stone pagodas of Bulga. It represents Sakyamuni preaching the truth in this world, as if to say that in this world, truth is simple and clear. The pagoda looks very modest and neat. To its side, the Dabuk-top pagoda testifies to Sakyamuni's sermon on the truth. The pagoda symbolizes the spectacular moment when the Amitabha Buddha entered into paradise. These unique pagodas are some of the greatest masterpieces of ancient Buddhist art. Bulga, which embodies Buddha's kingdom here on earth, was Korea's first UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the sacred Tohamsan of Kungju is being preserved. Like this, Korean Buddhist culture developed in the mountains. Temples were built all over the mountains, from gorges to peaks, even on the edges of cliffs. So even today, when Koreans think of Buddhist temples, they think about the mountains. Here is Soraksan Cheonbul-dong Valley, one of the three most famous valleys in Korea. Cheonbul means 1,000 statues of Buddha because the rocky cliffs on the sides of the valley resemble Buddha. Among them, Bisondae is so beautiful that legend says it is where an immortal mountain wise man ascended into the heavens. Since ancient times, many poets came for inspiration from the landscape. Beside Bisondae on the hillside, we notice the Gumgangul. It is a small cave that can barely fit 7 people lying down. Legend says that 1,400 years ago, a famous monk, Won-hyo, came here for meditation. Even today, many people make the dizzying climb here to make wishes. The culture of making wishes at mountain temples continues to thrive. Come autumn, crowds of people make the journey to Gwanbong at Mount Palgong. The people come to make wishes in front of the Buddha that appears to be wearing a bamboo hat called Gotbawe Buddha. Interestingly, the flat rock on Buddha's head is not made from the same stone, yet the wind does not knock it off. They say this Buddha fulfills at least one wish for those who ask sincerely. So when people have important events in their lives, they come here to this peak. Even Jirisan, one of the 3 most famous mountains of Korea, has Buddhist temples. This imposing sound that echoes across the hills comes from Jirisan's Hwaum-sa. This temple was founded by a monk who came from India in the 6th century AD. With its long history comes many cultural heritage properties. In its walls, Hwaum-sa has 4 national treasures and 4 registered treasures. Among them, Gakwangjong is Korea's largest Buddhist altar. Since its completion in the 17th century, it has undergone several repairs. Among existing wooden architecture, it is the 2nd largest in Korea. This stone lantern in front of the Gakwangjong is 6.4 meters tall, making it the world's tallest stone lantern. How they made such a grand temple this far into the mountain shows the advanced architecture of that time. The sound of the drums echoes, calling all at Hwaum-sa to morning and the evening worship. The loudest Buddhist drum awakens even the livestock and wild animals. Finally, the bell rings to bless all living things in the vicinity. Like this, Hwaum-sa's tangible and intangible cultural heritage is being passed on today. Mudongsan is a national park famous for its beautiful natural landscape. The Sogumgang Valley stretches long, and each of the spectacular boulders on its sides have their own legends. Many poets came as well and wrote scores of enduring literary works. The 21-kilometer path from the Sogumgang Valley to Woljong Temple on the south end of Mudongsan is Korea's #1 scenic route. When we enter Woljongsan, a 1-kilometer fir forest that stretches from the front door to the main building greets us. The trail in this forest, nicknamed the 1,000-year forest, is one of Korea's most beautiful trails. The first thing we notice at Woljongsan is the towering pagoda. This stone pagoda was made in the 10th century to store the sutras and the relics of Buddha. This spectacular 9-story octagonal pagoda helps us see a bit of the medieval age of Korea's Buddhist culture. On Buddha's birthday, people hold a commemorative ceremony in which they circle this pagoda while holding lanterns. This ritual is called tapdori. People slowly follow a monk around the pagoda as they make their individual wishes. Tapdori is one of Korea's folk traditions, and it continues to this day in temples throughout the country. There is another precious cultural heritage at Woljongsan. About 4 kilometers from Woljongsan, this building is called Mudongsan National History Archives, or the Sago, which stored the annals of the Joseon dynasty. Woljongsan was entrusted with the duty of protecting the Mudongsan Sago. The annals of the Joseon dynasty covers the detailed records of 25 kings over the span of 472 years. The Joseon dynasty preserved the precious annals by making copies and hiding them in safe places. This Mudongsan Sago, hidden deep in the mountain, was one of the copies. These annals, long protected by the mountain, have been designated a UNESCO memory of the world property. Along with Buddhism, another religion that took root in the mountains is Confucianism. Even Confucian scholars believed the mountains were sacred and divine. This is Sobeksan, and from it we can see endless mountains laid before us. When we descend the smooth and gentle slope, we encounter the Sosu Confucian Academy. This academy was a private school that taught Confucianism in this region. Founded in 1543, this was Korea's first Confucian academy. When we enter the school, we first see a dense forest of pine trees. They say pine trees are for scholars. This means, like the pines remain green in the winter, scholars strive for the truth even in life's toughest moments. For 500 years since the end of the 14th century, Joseon adopted Confucianism as the governing philosophy, and selected governing officials through Confucian exams. To pass the exams, an upper-class male would study his entire life. The Sosu Academy has classrooms, a dormitory, and library buildings. There is a pavilion at the observation point overlooking Sopaksan. It was a place to write poetry and hold debates. There was a village for scholars around the academy. This once bustling location is now a place to experience and pass down the traditions of the past Confucian culture. In Andong, Gyeongsangbuk-do, there is a famous academy that is known as the Home of the Scholars. Here at Dosan Confucian Academy, Twage Yi Huang spent his later years teaching his disciples. Yi Huang is a great scholar that started a large branch of Korea's Confucian philosophy in the 16th century. He was greatly respected by later scholars for his great achievements and character. Today, his face is printed on Korea's currency. People not only look for where he studied, but also trace where he walked. The approximately 20-kilometer path from Dosan Academy to the Nakdong River is where Yi Huang used to travel from Andong to Cheongyeon-san. A pavilion called Gosongjang, about halfway down the trail, is where Yi Huang would often sit and rest. It is said that in it, he took in the landscape and wrote several poems. He said that he would gaze at the landscape and walk into the picture. The mountain at the end of the path is Cheongyeon-san. Yi Huang loved Cheongyeon-san so much that he called it my mountain. His pen name was Cheongyeon-san-ite, thus calling himself a Cheongyeon-san man. At the Cheongyeon Jongsa, a small and modest house, he would read his books. Yi Huang would see the sight of peaks covered in clouds called Cheongyeon-san, a sacred mountain with a clear energy. He notably said, climbing a mountain is like reading. This means when we climb mountains, we learn the law of nature. And when we descend, we learn about our limits. Later on, Cheongyeon-san became a shrine for those studying Confucianism. Numerous scholars who admired Yi Huang visited Cheongyeon-san and wrote nearly 1,000 works of literature. And the Confucian scholarly culture of visiting mountains gradually developed. Kungju's Mudongsan, with its mysterious scenery, is another pilgrimage site for Confucian scholars. When we reach the cloud-covered summit, we see the two towering attractions of Mudongsan, Ipsok-dae, and Sosok-dae. These numerous stone pillars that hold up the sky were created by volcanic eruptions 9,000 years ago. These majestic structures resemble pillars of ancient shrines. On the northern foot of Mudongsan, we see several pavilions, In this location, with a majestic view of the landscape, Joseon-era scholars erected pavilions and wrote poetry. The poets sang praises about nature at the unique view from Mudongsan. Here, they shared their works and spread culture. Today, this Mudongsan area is considered the origin of the Joseon era's written literature. It is a must-see place for those studying Korean literature. According to 16th century historical texts, there were about 900 pavilions throughout the country. From this, we can assume that there were active cultural interactions in Korea at the time. Korea's mountains embraced a variety of cultures and gave birth to new ones as well. One of the new cultures is pansori. The folk genre called pansori began 300 years ago, and it is now Korea's most well-known traditional folk music. A lot of outstanding pansori artists came from the base of Jirisan. The founder and a lot of well-known singers of Dongpyeongjae pansori, the biggest subgenre, were born and raised here. Jirisan's Goryeo Falls is where the singers honed their craft to become famous. They made their way to the mountain falls in the summer, where the waters flowed ferociously. At the base, they would sing for days on end, competing with the sounds of the falls. Stories of singing until their voices were louder than the falls, until they could taste blood, are still being passed down. After honing their skills, they went out into the world and made countless people laugh and cry with their music. This love story ascends social status and delightfully satirizes the absurdities of society. Accompanied by a drummer, a singer would unravel this story for 3 hours at the least, to at most 6 hours. Today, the base of Jirisan is the birthplace of Korean traditional music. It commemorates the history of Korean traditional music and trains young folk musicians. These mountains that helped birth the culture of Korea also protected its people when dangers arose. Korea's mountains have about 2,000 small to big mountain fortresses. We do not know the names or ages of many of these fortresses. This fortress that surrounds this peak is Goso-song. To its back is the mountain, and to its front is the river. Its strategic location helped defend against enemy troops. The walls extend for 1.5 kilometers and are estimated to have been built in the 5th century. The fortress was built solidly on high ground to defend against oncoming enemies. This is Korea's most beloved mountain, Soraksan. Many people come to this mountain for its towering and gorgeous features. But, as much as its landscape is spectacular, it is very hard to climb. It is one of Korea's hardest mountains to climb. Today, we can go to the top easily by riding a cable car, but in the past, Soraksan was itself a natural fortress. However, on top of this steep boulder mountain, there are traces of a fortress built about 1,000 years ago. It is the Gwanggumsang, which sits at 800 meters above sea level. In the past, the fortress walls extended for about 3,500 meters. Today, most of it is gone, leaving only traces behind. We cannot determine the exact date of its construction, but when the Mongols invaded the Korean peninsula in the 12th century, nearby citizens came to seek shelter. The countries of the Korean peninsula existed between the pressure from China and the aggression from Japan across the sea. It was hard to escape war, but the mountain fortresses played an important role at those times. As time went on and building techniques developed, people built larger and more durable fortresses. The fortresses built across the regions generally served as places of refuge for nearby residents. Worak Mountain boasts of its steep features and thick virgin forest. Even here, the Documentaries was built to protect nearby people. The Documentaries is a unique structure with a 15-kilometer circumference of 4-layer walls. Each of the 4 layers was constructed at different times. That is because each layer was constructed whenever a major war began. As layer after layer of the fortress was added on this rugged hill, it became impregnable. It is recorded that in the 13th century, the same Mongols that took over the world sieged Documentaries, but could not take it. Documentaries, the refuge built together by man and mountain, protected people from war in every era. Meanwhile, Seoul, Korea's capital, experienced fierce wars in every era. There is plenty of water from its large river. It sits at a strategic location for transportation in the center of the Korean peninsula. It is surrounded by mountains, so it was a great place to defend against invasions. Therefore, since ancient times, several kingdoms coveted Seoul. They said, the one who possesses Seoul possesses the Korean peninsula. Countries fought fierce wars over Seoul. The Joseon dynasty, which was established at the end of the 14th century with Seoul as its capital, sought to defend Seoul. Therefore, Joseon erected fortresses in the south and north of Seoul. Here is Namsansan, which guards Seoul from the south. The essence of over 1,000 years of construction skill is included here. The walls are built on a series of peaks that stand more than 500 meters above sea level. The approximately 12-kilometer walls curve along the ridgeline of the mountains. If we look down from the fortress, we can see the city of Seoul in the distance and the surrounding area. At the highest point is the watchtower, which looked for signs of enemies. Many ministers of war directed the military from this command post. Namsansan was impregnable. On the other hand, the land within the walls was low and flat. Inside were not only military facilities, but also government offices, storehouses, and temples. In hours of peril, it could be used as an emergency capital city. Also, there was a temporary palace for the king called Henggung. It included buildings for the king's state affairs and buildings to house mortuary tablets for his predecessors. Joseon's 16th king, Injo, retreated to this fortress and directed the resistance during the invasion by the Qing dynasty of China. Meanwhile, the mountain that defended Seoul from the north was Bukhansan. Bukhansan is an important mountain that symbolizes not only Seoul, but all of Joseon. Legend says that Joseon's first king, Taejo, climbed to Baekhyundae, the summit of Bukhansan, and planned the establishment of Joseon. Bukhansan Fortress, built in the first half of the 18th century, was built to withstand cannon fire. Each of the giant stones weighed 400 to 800 kilograms. The people of the time knew that a man-made structure could not compare to that of the Creator. So the fortress connects the rugged rock terrain with man-made walls. The walls of such a fortress are about 12.7 kilometers long. Streams flowed within the walls, providing a source of water, allowing agriculture. The fortress was built to provide refuge for the king and Seoul's residents and defend the city in times of war. As such, mountains have been strong pillars that have upheld Korea's history and culture for thousands of years. Korea's historians believe that if it were not for the mountains, the people and dynasties of Korea, including its brilliant culture, would not have survived to this day. Even to modern Koreans, mountains are important places. 1 out of 3 Koreans hike the mountains at least once per month. And for the last 10 years, hiking has been the #1 hobby for Koreans. This is Bukhansan, where the azaleas are in full bloom. The summit is packed with visitors who come to see the pink flowers. The site of the ancient Myeon temple, erected in the 9th century, and the 3-story stone pagoda at the edge of the cliff attracts countless visitors. Even the Nadul-shide, which is best viewed from a distance, is Bukhansan's attraction. Many people come to the mountain in autumn to see the grandeur of the mountain and the foliage. The foliage here at Namsansan is one of Korea's best. The cultural heritage made over time give the mountains an even deeper and richer beauty. People immerse themselves in the picturesque landscape of the mountains. Among all the countries, perhaps Korea is the country that loves mountains most. We explored that inevitable reason in this journey. For thousands of years, the mountains have protected Korea. They are sacred treasures that connect the land with the heavens, as well as act as vessels for diverse cultures to bloom. They were grand stages for the history of the Korean people. Koreans today see the same landscape that their ancestors saw. And and continued the traditions they passed down for generations. Thus, the story of man and mountain continues to this day. And so, the mountains of Korea have been a close companion with its people and will remain with them as a precious heritage for generations to come.